In the beginning, long before the Bible as we know it was written, there was no single God ruling the heavens. Instead, ancient Israel's ancestors worshipped many gods, each tied to a different force of nature, a different land, a different destiny. Among them, one god stood above the rest, an ancient high god named El. He was the father of gods, the ruler of the divine council, the figure every other deity bowed before. And then, slowly, almost mysteriously, El disappeared. In his place rose a new god, one whose name would echo across millennia, Yahweh. But how did this happen? How did El, the supreme god of the Canaanite world, fade into the shadows while Yahweh became the sole God of Israel, the very God of the Bible? What secret battle of faith, politics, and power transformed a desert storm god into the God of creation itself? This is the story no priest wants to tell you. This is the forgotten truth about how Yahweh became the God of the Bible. And once you hear it, you'll never look at the scriptures the same way again. Before we go deeper, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because what you're about to uncover has been hidden in plain sight for over 3,000 years. Let's begin. In the ancient world, religion wasn't about one god, it was about many. Archaeology tells us that Israel's earliest ancestors lived among the Canaanites, a people who worshipped a full pantheon of deities. At the top of that pantheon was El, whose very name meant God. El was a father figure, a wise old creator, sitting high above the heavens. He was married to the goddess Asherah, and together they presided over a divine council of 70 sons, other gods who ruled over the nations of the world. To the Canaanites, El wasn't just one god among many. He was the God, the Eternal One, the Father. But alongside him were other powerful deities: Baal, the storm god, the bringer of rain and fertility, worshipped with wild rituals of thunder and fire; Mo, the god of death, lurking in the shadows, devouring life. And then, in the deserts to the south, among nomadic tribes, there was Yahweh, a god of storms, fire, and war, a god who traveled with wandering people, riding the winds, thundering in the mountains, and terrifying his enemies with lightning bolts. In those early days, Yahweh wasn't the highest god. He was a local deity, a regional warrior spirit, feared for his destructive power but not yet exalted above the cosmos. So how did this tribal storm god become the one true God of the Bible? The answer lies in a centuries-long struggle, a struggle of nations, of kingdoms, and of religious reformers who rewrote history itself. The earliest texts of the Bible, when examined closely, still whisper these forgotten truths. In Deuteronomy 32, for instance, an ancient version preserved in the Dead Sea Scrolls describes how the Most High, El, divided up the nations of the world among his sons. Each god was given a nation to rule, and Yahweh's share was Israel. Think about that. In this ancient text, Yahweh wasn't the Most High himself. He was one of the sons, a younger god, given Israel as his inheritance. El was still above him, the true father of all. But over time, that verse was rewritten. Later, scribes changed sons of God into sons of Israel, quietly erasing the evidence that Israel once believed in a pantheon. The text was altered to hide Yahweh's rise from a minor deity to the supreme. And archaeology backs this up. In inscriptions from the 9th century BCE, we find references to Yahweh and his Asherah. Yes, Yahweh once had a consort, a goddess wife, just like El did. In fact, early Israelites carved images of her, prayed to her, and saw her as the mother of life. But later priests, desperate to purify Israel's faith, erased her from the record. Asherah was stripped away, condemned as a false idol, while Yahweh was left standing alone, recast as the sole God. This was no accident. It was a revolution, a religious coup carried out by kings and prophets who wanted to unify their people under one God, one temple, one law. And to do that, they had to destroy the memory of El Asherah and the entire divine council. Yahweh had to absorb their titles, their powers, their stories, and that's exactly what happened. Over centuries, Yahweh slowly took on the qualities of El. The old storm god of the desert became the creator of heaven and earth. The war god of the mountains became the eternal father. The jealous god became the only God. And the Bible, carefully edited and rewritten across generations, told the story not as a replacement, but as if Yahweh had always been the one true God. But the traces remain. In Genesis, God is sometimes called El Shaddai, a name connected to the older high god El. In Exodus, Moses asks for God's name, and the reply is strange. By my name Yahweh I was not known to them. What does that mean? It means earlier generations knew God by other names. El Shaddai, Only later did Yahweh become the dominant name. And the word Elohim itself, used throughout the Bible, is plural. It literally means gods. The Bible, in its earliest language, still carries echoes of polytheism, even though later editors forced it into the mold of monotheism. The remnants of the divine council are there, hidden in plain sight. Psalm 82 even describes God standing in the assembly of gods, judging among them. This isn't the picture of a solitary God ruling alone. It's the memory of the old pantheon, barely concealed. So what happened to El? The answer is that he didn't vanish, he was merged. Yahweh swallowed him whole. The storm god became the creator. The warrior became the father. El and Yahweh fused together, their identities blended, until only one name remained in the scriptures. And in that fusion, Israel's religion transformed from polytheism to monotheism. But it wasn't a smooth transition. For centuries, the people resisted. They still worshipped Baal in secret. They still prayed to a sheep. The prophets raged against them for idolatry. But in truth, this wasn't foreign idolatry. This was their own ancestral religion, slowly being rewritten by reformers. Kings like Josiah tore down altars, burned idols, destroyed temples, all to erase the memory of Israel's polytheistic past. The priests of Jerusalem insisted that Yahweh was not just Israel's God, but the only God. And little by little, generation after generation, the old gods disappeared. The final blow came during the Babylonian exile. When Jerusalem was destroyed and the people were carried off in chains, the prophets reinterpreted the disaster. They claimed Yahweh had punished his people for worshipping other gods. That crisis became the ultimate justification for monotheism. The message was clear: worship only Yahweh or face destruction. Out of trauma and exile, monotheism was forged. By the time the Bible was finalized, El had been fully absorbed. Asherah was forgotten. The divine council was erased. Yahweh stood alone as the eternal, unchanging God. But the truth is, Yahweh was not always alone. He rose to power through centuries of struggle, rewriting, and reimagining. He became the God of the Bible not because he always was, but because history demanded it. And here's the shocking part. Scholars now believe that the very idea of one universal God may not have been born from lofty theology, but from politics. A single God meant a single temple, a single priesthood, a single authority. Monotheism was not just about faith, it was about power. By erasing El and exalting Yahweh, Israel's leaders built a religion that bound their people together and gave them a unique identity in a world of empires. Yet, if you peel back the layers, the echoes remain. The father El, the mother Asherah, the storm god, Yahweh, the divine council all still haunt the Bible's oldest verses, waiting to be discovered by those who dare to look. So the next time you hear the words, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth," remember this: once upon a time, that God was not one, but many. And Yahweh, the God we know today, was once just a tribal storm god, whose rise to power reshaped history, faith, and the very way we understand the divine. And that raises the most haunting question of all. If Yahweh was not always the one true God, then what does that mean for the faith built upon him? Was it revelation or revolution? Was it eternal truth or the greatest rewrite in religious history? What happened to El was not a disappearance, but a transformation. His crown was taken, his name forgotten, but his essence still lingers in the God of the Bible. Yahweh became El, and in doing so, he became the God who would rule not just Israel, but billions of believers across the world. The story of Yahweh's rise is not just ancient history. It is the foundation of every synagogue, every church, every Bible, and every hotel drawer. And now, you know the truth, so tell me, does it change the way you see the Bible?